What I've appreciated about Pastor Scott is just his heart for missions and his heart for going someplace maybe that's not as comfortable, not like home, and being willing to share his faith there. I think this morning he had a sermon about the shepherding and about the sheep. I thought it was very telling this morning when he talked about Jesus' parable of the shepherd that left the 99 to go and find the one, the lost one. And that really, for me, shows the heart of our Pastor Scott. He's, at this time, making a choice to leave the 99 and go find that lost sheep. And not, just anywhere, but going to a place that's so difficult, and going there to minister to the least of these. I really appreciate his courage.
I would agree. I think Pastor Scott's being used by the Holy Spirit is not going to be just in the Ukraine, but I think he has a major impact on our congregation and all the people who know him, really, by being willing to go. That testimony, I think, changes our hearts and focuses our hearts on people outside of ourselves, and being willing to pray and committing to pray for them too. So I think that's been a major influence for me.
Pastor Scott has really influenced our family because he makes us want to come to church. We have a teenager, and on Wednesday nights, sometimes she'll say, I'm not going to go to church, and Pastor Scott will call, and all of a sudden she's going to church. So he really makes us want to be here.
Pastor Scott was privileged to attend the seminary in St. Louis, and I believe he did a super job in training him as a teacher and a preacher. And so he's had a very positive influence on our congregation, on me personally. I have been fed. Whenever he has preached, he's done an excellent job of studying the text. He's a good exegete. He's studied the Bible, biblical text before he preaches and before he teaches. I also have been very pleased with Pastor Scott's use of stories. The thing I learned from him is that movies actually have a message. I've been of the false opinion that really one ought not to spend too much time watching, Hollywood movies, but I have listened to Pastor Scott tell about movies that he has seen, and I'm sure they're clean movies, but movies that he's seen that were, big time movies from Hollywood, and how he's been able to tie in a story from those movies. So he's done a very good job and influenced me to actually take seriously some of the products of the movie industry, even for our illustrative use in sermons and teaching. So he's had an influence even on an old pastor. Old dogs can learn new tricks. Thank you, Pastor Scott.
How you can make fun in the little things that you can do. And I want to thank him for helping me with all the verses so I can get done with my book and go to the next level.
I really respect his heart of compassion for the nations and for just running after people, whether it be the kids or those who are hurting. Yeah, his passion for the things that are on God's heart is really cool to see. I respect him for that, and I also take great joy and delight in seeing his heart for people. I think it looks a lot like the heart that Christ had for the world. It is really, really wonderful to see that in someone who's around my age.
I think one of the biggest ways he's influenced me is from just being okay with saying no, or that we don't know an answer to about the question, or I need some time to look that up, and being okay with unanswered questions. And he's been really good about that. I think also just I've really been inspired by his quiet spirit, and it's so opposite mine, but I think he listens in such a different way than I do, and just watching him minister to people in that way has been some things I've learned.
Pastor Scott has showed me, I believe, what it's like to have a heart for God. He has a true joy. I just see that undercurrent of joy that's not dependent necessarily on outward circumstances. He has a love for God, and I notice that. It's encouraged my faith. He has a very strong faith, and that's evident. He has a very strong love for God, and it's just encouraged me to see how that can play out, even when things don't necessarily go the way we want.
I get to interact a lot with the youth with Pastor Scott, and it's always awesome to see how he connects with them and how they just really respond well to that and connect in turn with him. And something I appreciate is just that he never gives up on people, he never gives up on them, and if he asks them to be a part of something or invites them to come to CIA or come to an event or whatever the case may be, even if he gets shot down or even if they don't end up showing up, he still believes in them and still has faith that they'll come around. I just appreciate his willingness to reach out and to continue to care for the youth as well as the adults that come into his path.
I believe I caused a certain amount of anxiety in Pastor Scott over the last 2-3 years because I've been inviting him to go skiing with me. And of course, he has gone downhill skiing, but he had never gone cross-country skiing. So I kept asking him, and finally this year, the 13-14 winter, we got a lot of snow. I'm very pleased. Of course, that's my element, is to the snow and cross-country skiing. And finally, we got together, and Pastor Scott got a pair of cross-country skis. And I think with fear and a certain amount of fear and trepidation, he set out. But I was so impressed that I didn't have to pick him up out of the snow at all, and he got his balance and got his pace. I think Pastor Scott had a victory the day he went cross-country skiing with this old Norski. And that was a special time for Pastor Scott and I to enjoy a northern, an Iowa, Minnesota sport of cross-country skiing. And I was impressed. He did a very good job.
This last Christmas he came to we have Christmas at my mother and dad's house. My family, my sister's family was there. We played games. Scott came. We played like a traveling bingo, and you would get the prize. Well, he ended up taking all the prizes home, and he didn't feel bad about that one bit, but it was all good, so.
Pastor Scott's very good about telling stories about himself. Some of the stories are stories that I would never admit to doing, even if I had done them, but he seems to not have that problem, which is great. It makes for great sermons as well. But my all-time favorite was when he was talking about how he and a group of buddies decided it would be a great idea, an absolutely wonderful idea, to put on a dog's collar, and there was an invisible fence, and they kept walking closer and closer to it. And as soon as he said that they had thought about doing this, I remember thinking, oh, this is going to end very, very badly. This is just not a good idea. And sure enough, it wasn't, but it was a really, really funny story. The other thing is he has been leading the young adult Bible studies. I really appreciate the effort that he's put into leading those, and then also his mercy while he's been leading them. I sometimes struggle with some of the theological terms, and he's always very good about reading them for me, and I really appreciate that.
When we were playing Lego Marvel Superheroes, when we did this car battle where we wrecked into each other, when our inner tube called the Pepper flipped over and Scott and I and Grace were on that was really funny.
When he first came to Ascension, he appeared to be very shy, so we thought we were going to have to lock the office door even and not let him out to get him to carry on a conversation. That has changed, and we found out he likes peanut butter M&Ms, so we just kind of go with that. And there have been times when he has also noticed that our stock of M&Ms has been out, and he'll give us that look like, oh, we're out.
Okay, one memorable moment Tom and I have is Tom received a phone call, I believe it was a little later on a Friday night, but somehow he had gone somewhere on a Friday and rolled his window down on his truck, and it stuck. And it wouldn't come back up. He drove his car, I think, to Pastor Len's house to put it in a garage. I don't think he had a garage at the time. And he called Tom and said, "Is there any way you can help me with this?" And of course, Tom's okay with helping him with this. But of course, it's one of these days that's like 10 below zero as a high. So he drove way from Pastor Len's house, or his house, somewhere over in that direction, all the way over to our house in Evansdale with his window down. I asked Tom about it. He thinks it had to have been 15 below zero when he came over to our house. And he was all bundled up in his truck and stuff, but he wasn't complaining or anything. But it became a funny moment for us because Tom always kind of had qualms about the California guy, and he earned his respect for being Iowan that day.
Pastor Scott is a gamer, so no matter what the game or activity is, he is all in 100%, and that's something that I really appreciate about Pastor Scott. One of my favorite memories of Pastor Scott is in youth group. We were doing an Oreo challenge, and after the challenge, he decided that he was going to take it upon himself to do a new challenge of his own, which was to stuff as many of these Oreos into his mouth all at once. And he has a pretty large mouth, so it was pretty entertaining to watch this unfold. And the kids thought it was great, of course. And hopefully Ron didn't hate us too much the next day when he got to clean up after us. So that was one of my favorite memories.
I think when I first heard that Pastor Scott was going to leave our parish and accept the call to serve as a missionary pastor in the Ukraine, I had a mixture of feelings. I certainly had felt sad because we really have felt he's been a very important part of our parish, and we didn't want to lose him. And so there was that sadness in my heart, but also joy, because I sensed that he really did have a clear sense of the Lord's call to this mission work in Ukraine. So I rejoice with him in that regard. And now that this is a fiat accompli, in other words, he's ready to go, and he's just about on his way. He's on his way soon. My earnest prayer, and Mardell and I lift him up in our prayers every day as we do Pastor Len and his family. My earnest prayer for Pastor Scott is that he will have the joy of knowing that he is serving the Lord Jesus as the Lord wants him to, and that he'll have the joy of seeing that he makes a difference for Christ in the lives, in the hearts of people in the Ukraine. And I pray that the ministry under which he goes, God's Hidden Treasures, will have all of the supplies, the wheelchairs, and all that's needed for that ministry. But I certainly pray for Pastor Scott's safety also, especially in the light of the turmoil in the Ukraine. So we not only wish him, but we pray for him and ask the Lord to surround him with his protecting arms. And we'll continue to pray for him. Thank you, Pastor Scott.
My hopes and prayers for Pastor Scott is that he would be able to see the Lord moving in the Ukraine, and not just with the people that he's ministering to, with everybody he encounters, that he'd be able to see the Lord's hand, that the nation of Ukraine would come to the Lord at this time. I, of course, want him to stay safe and everybody's with. More than that, I want for him and for the nation of the Ukraine to see the glory and the love of God. I also pray that he would have strength. His ministry that God has called him into is not an easy one, and so my prayer for him is that the Lord would give him strength, and daily that he would be fed by the word.
We hope that he will have as much of an impact on the kids there that he has here, and also all the people. Anybody that you talk to at our church, from a little kid to a teenager to an older person, they all love him, and it's going to be really hard to fill his shoes. Another hope is that he will come back to Ascension, but don't know if that'll happen.
Well, my first hope and prayer is for his safety and his ministry, because I remember the day that he told us about heading to Ukraine, and he was so, you could just tell it was a passion on his heart. And I was sad and maybe even a little angry, not wanting him to go, but you could see it was his passion. And so my prayers are for his safety, and that he's able to do the ministry that God called him there to do, and that God will remove all the barriers that are standing in the way with visas and stuff like that right now. So that's one of my prayers for him. Another prayer is just that he'll continue in the will of God, because somebody told me once, you can't afford to be out of the will of God. So I just pray that he continues to seek God's will for his life and for his ministry. Selfishly, I would pray that he'd come back here someday, but we'll see what God has in store for that. I also pray that he'll find a wonderful wife. Well, not necessarily in Ukraine, but wherever he finds her. I pray that he'll find somebody that will love and cherish him, because I think he's a great guy, and he deserves an amazing lady to spend his life with sometime. Sorry, Pastor Scott, had to throw that in. But yeah, and I just pray he'll stay in contact with our church, and I know we will. I'm insanely excited about partnering in ministry with VBS this summer. So good luck, Pastor Scott, and we'll be praying for you.
When Pastor Scott got back from Ukraine last summer, I had a conversation with him about his time there, and it was just obvious that God had placed a passion on his heart for the people there, and that God was at work using him in that specific place with those specific people. I hope and pray that God continues to use his gifts to reach the people, to encourage them, to serve them, and just really be a blessing. And in turn, that God would bless him as he ministers and reaches them, and is just able to be used by God in some pretty cool ways.
I hope and pray that his faith will remain strong. I don't doubt that it will. That his faith will remain strong, that he will continue to have his just a joy and exuberance that he brings to anything. He just has a love for the kids, and I just hope the best for him. I just want that undercurrent of joy for him to continue as he seeks God's will, and as I believe he is living out his calling, his ministry.
My hopes and prayers for Pastor Scott are that he will just have that privilege of seeing kind of the wonder of God at work, seeing God work in totally new ways. I know he's been to Ukraine before, but I think there'll be just a whole different flavor for him in going as a long-term committed missionary. And so I just pray that he'll be used by God in very effective ways in showing people who Christ is and what the message of salvation is.
And that's a good point, that he might even see some of the fruit of his work there. That would be a real privilege for him too. And so we'll be praying along that line, but also, yeah, just that he'd be used. I think we all agree we're sending our best to the Ukraine, and so we really do want to see God glorified through all he does.
I hope that he has a really, really fun time there, and I hope that nothing will go wrong, and that God will bless him on his journey.
Cheese puffs are really good, just to let you guys know. If you ever
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, there we go. There. Oh my gosh. I like the humor.
Nick, you remind me of a gerbil.
It's almost there. Oh,
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Scott!
You're
Scott,
really
like a
Nick,
pro
you got
at
this
it.
one?
35 seconds left! Scott, do you need
Nice work, guys.
Yep. Dang it.
Oh, 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 oh.
Oh my god. 20 seconds.
Come on, come on.
No, 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 no.
Oh my god. Oh, 2 cookies! 2 cookies!
Oh.
2 cookies here!
You want a third one?
5,
Oh, man.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's it. Oh. 3 cookies. Oh.
That ain't fair. How did you do that?